Alright, welcome back. This is part 3 of my Dana 30 rebuild. I'm going to be meshing these gears in today. If you've not seen part 2, it's got a lot of precursor stuff that you kind of would need to know about to make all this make sense. I'll put a link in the top right corner there that you can go back and watch that. You probably want to watch that first and then watch this one. If not, also at the end of this video I'll put a link to a playlist that's got all the parts for this rebuild. One of the things that I did is I have adjusted this now. I've got 0 backlash and I've got basically about 8 thousandths of end play set up. And while the instructions for this ring gear set say you need to be between 7,000 and 9,000, on this ring gear itself it actually has a marking of 6,000, meaning that it meshed in best at 6,000. So my goal is to get really close to 6,000, but for this initial testing piece I just need to get somewhere close. Somewhere between 5 and 8 would probably be fine, because again we're really trying to set the pinion depth at this point. We need to have this close, but this is not good. We'll dial this in really tight at the end. Now I did make a mistake in the previous video where I measured for my 0 backlash. When I pulled this out to go and reset this, I actually found one of my larger shims had a pretty good nick in it, which caused a little piece, and so I've got that sanded back off and reestablished what that is. So and then remeasured my 0 end play. So if you saw the details of this sheet, I've readjusted this. My 0 end play requires 69 thousandths of shimming. I left the top like it was, but down here at the bottom I've had to readjust the number of shims to get to that 69,000. And you can see here all these are now zeros on the delta, so I was able to get right at 69 thousandths with the quantity of shims that I have on hand. So right now I believe I'm in set number 1, which is 10 thousandths on the left hand side, or the passenger side. This is the passenger side. And then I've got 59 thousandths on the right hand side of the differential with this combination of shims. So this is where we are, and we're getting, like I said, 8 thousandths of backslash. So we're going to paint this up and take a look at what the pattern looks like, and then we'll make some decisions from there. Alright, so here's our first patterns. I'll take some pictures and put these up where you can see them a little better. This is the drive side, looking here, and then looking over here with the coast. I'm not so worried. We're actually in the center, up and down from heel to toe, but I'm not worried about that really. I'm worried about whether it's too close to this face or too close to the root. That's this way or this way, because that's my pinion depth. And right now it's too deep into this root, therefore that pinion is too high, and I've got to lower it. And the reason I know that is the left side of that pattern right there is flat and the top side is round. As I move that out toward the face, this direction, this will stay round, and this flat side will become round, and we'll get a nice oval. So I'm trying to get that first. I've got to lower that pinion, and I don't know, but I'm going to lower it maybe 10 thousandths to start with. But I'll start keeping track of these. I'm going to show you my process. I'll kind of go through it fast motion for you, but this one little process is going to happen over and over again until I get that pattern moved where I want to, and I'll keep a record of what each time I make an adjustment, what those patterns look like. Alright, this process starts by taking out the differential. You'll notice that I didn't put the caps on, and I don't torque it down to get these first initial readings. It just doesn't make that big of a difference. So no sense in spending all that time taking it down and not getting any difference. You can get that thing set down deep in there to get you a good pattern. This is all sped up about 50%, so it's a little bit faster than normal, but just trying to cover over all the steps. basically need to take off this yoke so we get the pinion pulled out, and then we'll be replacing and swapping out the shim picker. So right here, because I've got that setup race that was able just to reach down in there and pull that out, there's the shim pack that was currently in there. I'm checking my little chart, determining how far down I want to go, and determining which new shims I need. Here's the new shim pack. It will just drop in, so will this race. Yeah, I've seen where if you put that down in there, you want to spin it a little bit. Just make sure there's nothing binding. Here I'm going to use a little impact wrench just to bring it down kind of tight, but I'm not going to take it to anything final. Just kind of do most of the work for me. And then I'll finish that with just a ratchet. One thing you'll notice as you tighten that down, it'll feel tight, but you spin it a couple times and the individual bearings kind of get seated where they want to rest, and it actually loosens up, so you definitely want to spin it a couple times. And here I'm checking, trying to get to about 10 inch-pounds. Leave it a little bit more tightening. I think that measured right at 10, maybe 11, something like that. So pinion's back in place. Now I'm looking for the configuration I want to now drop down to for my side bearing shim. And after you do a couple of these, you realize if you move the pinion down 5 thousandths, you kind of need to move the differential over about 5 thousandths, because it is a kind of a 90-degree type relationship. So once you get kind of a couple of sets, you can kind of guesstimate how much you want to do there. Right there, it just dropped in. Here I'm just hitting it just to make sure the cups are seated to the left and the right, and it's all the way in the bottom. And then here I'm going to take a reading on backlash. And it happened to hit it just right on for this particular setup. So now I'm going to paint the gears and then take our reading. And then when you're rotating the gear, you want to put a little bit of back pressure on it just to almost create like a load so that it marks it really well. Now I want to go through kind of, it ended up taking me 7 different sets, and I kept getting closer and closer. And as I mentioned on that first set where looking at the drive side pictures, just that first column of pictures, if you just kind of go down through there, that first set, you can see on the left side of the pattern it's flat. That means that pinion's really too far engaged into the ring gear, and you ultimately got to lower it and bring it away from the ring gear a little bit. So as I came down, the flatness kind of continued through 3 and maybe 4. 5, it possibly started going away. 6, it looked better, but still had a little flat spot on it. When I got to 7, the 7th configuration, I really felt that I had pushed it out far enough. I had some rounded edges on the top and the bottom, so the pinion now, that is going to be my pinion depth that I want to go with. All right, so here's the end of the 7th configuration I've put together. This is with a pinion depth shim of 20 thousandths, and I've got the side shims. I've got 6,000 of backlash, and I do have now these torqued down. So this is, and let me show you, I'm gonna pull you in close, show you some close-ups of the 2 patterns, and this is what I'm looking for. It's oval on kind of both sides, and I think this is what I'm going to go with. So now what I'm going to do is, now my pinion that's the pinion depth I need. We're going to take the differential back out, and we're going to just physically get that pinion now set up with all its brand new bearings, races, and then we got to add the pinion preload shims and get that set up just right. So that's another whole little thing, but at least we now know where we want that pinion to reside. Once we get that finalized, we will come back and actually have to make sure that we can still adjust this later. We want to come back and try and obtain this 6,000th end play on this. So let me get this back out and let's get working on that pinion. Okay, so I want to get this guy out. This is that setup race. I gotta get rid of that because now the real one's gonna go in. We're gonna put this stuff back in. And I'm gonna pound in the new race. Oops, see where it bounced? That means it hit bottom. Yeah. All right, next we got to work on preloading the bearings on the pinion, and we do that with some shims. These shims slide on the shaft and they go up and they hit a land that's in there, and they basically go between the two bearings and allow you to tighten this nut very tight. But these shims basically keep those bearings out a certain distance. Interesting thing, if you want to increase, if you got too little preload, and you want to increase the preload, you actually decrease the size of your shim pack, and then vice versa. This is a shim pack. It's the same thickness as these are new shims, but the same thickness of 72 thousandths of the original setup. I'm going to start there and see how we can go with that. So let's get these installed. Now the interesting thing, again on the preload, also you go to different sources, you get different information. This Dana pack that I've been following, it says 20 to 40 inch-pounds. That seems high to me, just like the other information in this pack seemed high. A book that I'd follow that also has some Dana information as well, it says 10 to 20. And then a guy that I know that does this quite a bunch, he says 12 to 15. So I'm going to kind of shoot the difference there, and I'm going to shoot for like 15. And if I get, somewhere, 14 to 20, I think I'll be good. So that's what I'm going to shoot for in my case. You might want to do your own research, but that's what I'm going to do. So let's get this. We're going to get these slid on. And they'll go up into that till they hit that land using a setup bearing and the yoke. I'm not going to use the oil slinger, which typically would go on next, and we're not going to put the seal, because the seal also creates some drag. We don't want to do that yet, not until we get this all the way we want it. So okay, there we're just kind of snug. It may need to go up a little bit tighter, but I am going to put some torque. This nut gets torqued to 200 foot-pounds. Okay, so we missed. We're way too loose. So we need to, in order to increase this drag, we got to decrease that shim pack. So I'm going to take, some amount off. Let me just open it back up, figure out what I've got, what I could take, maybe 4 or 5 thousandths off, something like that. See if I can get these bearings to be closer and create a little more friction. So let's get this back apart. Okay, we ended up with 18 inch-pounds. That's where I'm gonna leave it. If it's too loose, you end up wearing out your ring and pinion too fast. If it's too tight, you end up wearing out your bearings too fast, and then your ring and pinion. So you got to get it. All right, with that's going to finish the pinion. Now we're going to move back to the carrier side, get that all final adjustment, and check our pattern one last time. All right, this will be a good time to get these inner seals in. It's got a spring that goes toward the oil, so it needs to go in like this way. And interesting, on this side, when you're putting your axle in, it's got a little ramp there to help direct it into that. But I found a very large socket that fits just in there, and it'll push in the right spot. So get that. All right, the next thing we got to do is get this differential back in here. And if you remember, well, the first time we did all that setup with 0 backlash, but now we actually have to add an extra shim for preload. And I did a lot of research. The manual says 15 thousandths shim, extra shim for preload. The rear end of this Jeep only wanted 8,000, which I thought was, I mean, it's twice as much. We're talking about Timken bearings, which are, you know, you'd think they want to be preloaded about the same. There's a guy online that I trust a lot. He only uses 5,000. So I'm actually go somewhere between 8 and 10, somewhere in that area. And what I ended up doing is went back to my spreadsheet, and I'll show you a picture of this on the screen. But I've got the original 0 end play shim was at 69 thousandths. I've added 8,000. I'm going to put 4,000 on the left side. Try and put 4,000 on the left side, 4,000 on the right side. It's 8,000. If I add 8 to the 69,000, that's 77,000. So I've readjusted this spreadsheet for a grand total of 77 thousandths. And I've got basically set 6 here is basically the original configuration plus the 4,000 one side. Anyway, we're going to go with 33 thousandths on the passenger side, 44 thousandths on the driver's side, and that really should be adding 4 thousandths to both what worked out originally. And all we got to do really is try and get to that 6 thousandths of backlash. And if we can get to that backlash, we'll paint it up one more time, but that should give us a really good pattern. So let's get this dropped in with this configuration and see how that looks. Starting with the shim thicknesses that gave me that best pattern while we were setting up the pinion and then adding 4,000 to both sides, I'm actually get exactly that 6 thousandths. So that did not change my backlash at all. I still have exactly 6,000. I'm going to run another pattern, but I know the pattern's going to be good on that. Let's do that. Let me show you what that pattern looks like. So if you look at these patterns, both the left and right side of the pattern itself, in and out of the tooth, it still has that rounded shape to it. So I know my pinion depth is confirmed to be correct. And then the fact that these patterns aren't too close to the heel or the toe, which is, let's say on that bottom picture, it's to the left side or the right side, it's actually centered that way, then that means my backlash is set correctly as well. So we're going to go with these, take this pinion back out, and install the final bearings. All right, so that wraps up the center section of this axle rebuild. I've not put oil in this yet, and I'm not planning on it because I'm going to have to wheel it around the shop quite a bit, and I don't really want to do that until I got it sitting in the vehicle at ride height and orientation. So because it's now empty, I've got a whole bunch of different fluid tags I've made for all the different things that I'm rebuilding, and one of them here says front axle oil. So I'm going to attach this to this to remind me that I don't have oil in it yet. And at the point where I get this mounted in the Jeep, I will either fill it at that time, or if I don't fill it at that time and I get the drive shaft installed, I'll actually just move this tag to the steering wheel, and that reminds me that it needs to be done. So this is going to wrap up this video. If you want to see more, next we're going to do some axle work, we're going to do some knuckle work, and then ultimately some of the brake type of stuff. So if you like that type of content, I appreciate if you'd subscribe, hit the like button, and we'll see you next time.
Jack it up.